I'm sorry, I'm really sorry that we are late, but I'm really happy and excited that you're here. And we're Facebook Living this so that people who are not able to make it because of snow or whatever it may be can watch online. And then this will also be recorded for later, so if there's anything you want to come and revisit, you can. My name is Amy Hjerstedt. I'm with the League of Women Voters of the Eastern Upper Peninsula, which is a nonpartisan nonprofit organization, and we're all volunteer driven here. And we care deeply about citizen engagement and right now about the census because there's so much at stake with it. So just to give you, and also actually before I even get started, I want to let you know that there's a program that we're putting on next month. So before I forget, December 12th here, we're starting at 6, and it's about the Citizen Redistricting Commission. So I'm also equally excited about that because it is a historic first ever for the state of Michigan, a Citizen Redistricting Commission, and that instead of having politicians draw lines, it will be citizens drawing lines, which will end gerrymandering. And this is Census is hiring, so is this awesome Citizens Commission, which actually there is like closer to $40,000 or $45,000 if you are one of the lucky 13 that are selected. But it's also a truly amazing way to represent your state and to do something just phenomenal. Very few people in the country get to do it. So next month, December 12th, 6 p.m. we'll have food. We'll actually have a pro bono notary because in order for you to apply, you have to have the application notarized. So it's going to be a one-stop shop. So I hope that you can come. And then we'll also have a civic game as well as a presentation about what the commission is. So got that out. If you have any questions or want to learn more about the league, I highly recommend for the local league, go to Facebook at LWVEP. And so yeah. And I'm going to introduce, we have David here from the census. I'm going to do a presentation real quick, but I want to make sure that you all know that this is our guru in the room. I'm just pretending with a slideshow. But I don't know if I'm wait for Hi, this is David. But let me get
Thanks for coming out tonight.
Yes, thank you so much. I'll get through this slide really quick, and then I'm going to open it up to David since he came up here all this way from Traverse City, and then he knows everything about everything when it comes to this. So first of all,
that's not true, but I'll try to give you the answer the best I can.
Thank you. No, that's okay. Thank you. So this slideshow came from the League of Women Voters of Michigan. We have been awarded a grant, and this comes part with that grant, and they gave us all the tools to do it, so it's pretty cool. And I already went through all the leak stuff, so we're good there. All right, handouts. So on the back of the table, we have a ton of different handouts. So if there's any questions that you get tonight, after tonight, I'm sure that one of those handouts is going to answer it. And then when you're talking to other community members, so there's certain issues that certain people might have a hard time with census on, I think there probably is going to be a handout that will answer that. So like confidentiality and privacy is one of the issues that people are afraid to answer census. There's lots of documentation about that. If you want to learn more, you want to have, we have questions with league members. We always typically have a ton of questions, and so other league members have tried their best to answer those. So we actually have a document that answers questions that other league members have. So yeah, anyway, there's lots of stuff, so I recommend picking up everything you can over there. All right, so here's a little bit of an overview about what the census is. So it is, we do this every 10 years. Which is really exciting that we get to find out about our community and learn where we're moving and where we're going. The Constitution requires that we do this. It is actually stated in Article 1 of the Constitution. It happens March through June of 2020 this time around. And who does it? It's the Census Bureau, temporary people who work for the census, as well as volunteers. And where? It's wherever people are at. So wherever we're at, that's where it's at. So if you live in the woods in a camper, the census is going to be there. Respond by paper, phone, and internet. So this is new for the census, and we'll get into that, but you can actually do it online and by phone this time around. So that's really cool. It's meeting people where they're at. All right, so what could go wrong? Knowing about census, and there's a lot of issues that have happened in the past year about it, so we want to make sure, these are some of the things that we need to be aware of. So funding is one thing, right? This is a part of a government institution, and so we want to make sure that if it's underfunded, then we make sure we try to get that funding, or we're going to have to work extra hard getting volunteers and nonprofit groups to help out. Understaffing. So, for example, tomorrow there's a job thing. You can learn about how to get a job with Census. We have to make sure that we get enough people that are working for Census because there's a lot of undercounted people that might need an extra gentle nudge. The rules about where people are connected, confidentiality, and cybersecurity. So these are some other things that people might worry about that could go wrong. A lot of these things, though, actually, the Census is a very secure. Everything is a super secret squirrel, and it is very, like they said, it's a life oath. I'll get into it more in just a second. All right. So what is Census 2020? Okay. So this is, if you guys actually define it, representatives shall be apportioned among the several states according to their respective numbers, counting the whole number of persons in each state. So this is part of the Constitution about what census is and why it is required. So we want to make sure we know who is in our communities, and this is how they're counted. All right, so it has 7 simple questions this time around. So in the past, they actually had a long form, but they noticed that there wasn't a lot of people answering, or they didn't get nearly the amount that they needed. So they shortened it, doing a lot of, I'm sure, a lot of research, finding out what best people will actually answer. There's an American form that they put out every so often, and normal people will only get it like once, like you won't get it more than once every 5 years, but I'm guessing nobody here has probably ever had the American form, which is a long version. No. Oh, okay. I haven't had it, but
I'm surprised.
Really? I would love to get it. That would be super cool. But I think a lot of us haven't. So what you'll see is 7 questions, and we actually have a sample of it on the back table. So if you're interested in looking and seeing what it looks like, it's back there. But your name, your age, your sex, whether you're Hispanic origin, race, relation to the respondent, and whether you rent or own your home. Yeah.
You may not know the answer to this, but why is it specific to like write down that you are of Hispanic origin? Like, what is so specific about that? Because they'll always ask you, are you Hispanic, and then ask you anything else.
Nope. Yeah.
So,
I guess from what I understand is that because they've been asking it for so long, that they try to keep it in a like it's as part of doing social science experiment sort of thing. Like we want to make sure the wording is the same across the board because we're comparing it from the past. And so I think it has more to do with that, not anything. Right. I mean, no, it definitely has nothing to do with boards. This has been happening for decades, having this question in there. But you're right. It's yeah. Do you want to know?
And also people's self-identification. So it's Hispanic white, Hispanic non-white, Hispanic Native American.
okay.
So that that's the census does it a little less broad. Where if we went in like a hospital and there was no survey, it would be even more specific. But we do it. And just use American Indians as an example. They often consider themselves both, especially if they're a tribe that's down like New Mexico or Atlantic borders.
Awesome.
Okay. So according to this, because they've actually done a sample set of the census. And it takes about 10 minutes, so it's not very long to take. So when we talk with our community members, just tell them it's very easy. It doesn't take very long to answer. It came from since 1790, and it's been, of course, getting a little more complicated since 2000. And then, as I said before, it used to have a long form, but now it's very short. All right. What is Census 20? What is the 2020 census? As I said, it's short census form. It's more responses, and they did take a small sample in some areas, and that's called the American Community Survey. So they actually do this, tried to get samples from us now throughout the decade. So they've actually been studying us over the course of the last 10 years, but to get a full sample of the census, that's when we have our short form. Does that make sense? So the American Survey, they'll do it little pieces, population, sample size throughout the decade, but then you have the main census is once every 10 years. Okay, so why does the census matter? Can anybody say why it matters? Money. What kind of money?
Federal.
So what is the federal money tied to? Especially in this area.
Representative.
Oh, you mean like reapportionment, redistricting? Yep. So political lines, absolutely. And I just didn't put 2 and 2 together, but even county your county commission lines are even taken from that census data. So potentially, depending on where people have moved in the last 10 years, even Chippewa County lines could change a little bit depending on what's happened. Okay, so political lines, what else is about why does census matter, getting an accurate count?
Funding to the state, basically, which is boils down to how much we're gonna get for our schools locally and stuff.
Exactly, yep.
Roads.
Roads, yep, so our roads, our schools, even like lunches inside the schools is tied to this. Hospitals and clinics, job training, and oftentimes we here up in the Sioux, we talk a lot about jobs, and we need more jobs. The census data is actually used by companies. So what they do is they look at the different areas, how many people are in that area, how many people are educated, whether they rent their home or own their home. They decide then whether they want to actually invest in a community or not, depending on what comes out of that census data. Do they want to expand their operation? Do they want to contract? What kind of advertising do they want to do and target it to that particular population? So if you don't have good census data, how is a business supposed to know whether they want to come there or whether they want to get advertising there or whatever it may be? Or whether the federal government thinks, oh, this is a great place for doing job training or, expanding schools or lunch programs. There's a lot tied to the census. So we said reapportionment, redistricting, federal funding, and then what else was the other thing we said? I can't remember. I said it so fast. I can't remember that. Okay, well, those are the big two of them. All right. Okay, so why does it matter? It's mandated by the Constitution, so we don't want to break the law, and we value the Constitution and everything that's in it, so we want to make sure we follow along. And also, as we said, redistricting. So drawing those lines, our people power in those districts. And that's going to happen in 2020. We're going to be having the census, and then we're going to have we'll see it on the timeline, but that information will be sent to the president's desk in December of next year, and then pretty soon our Citizens Redistricting Commission will be assembled, and then they're going to take that information and draw those lines. Okay, so why else does it matter is the money. So the data is used to distribute hundreds of billions of dollars. So it's over $600 billion this time around that's in federal funding. That is a lot of federal funding that's going across the country. Michigan alone, this was what 2016. That's a lot of figures in there. That's a lot. Okay, so why else does it matter? As we had said, a lot of it has to do with we want where we put our new housing. So that's a housing issue always we talk about up here in the Sioux. Whether we repair old infrastructure or we want to invest in new infrastructure. Planned transportation systems. We don't have this on here, but also energy infrastructure. What kind of energy and do we invest in that energy? Police and fire precincts, build new or close existing schools. So everything that has to do with us and our community and having a vibrant community is tied to that census. Okay, so why does the census continue to matter? As I said before, it's the business, individuals, nonprofit organizations, and for research, academics. Lake State, I'm sure they use census stuff all the time when their students are doing research. I know I used it in the past. Okay, so when, who, and where. All right, so this is kind of the timeline of roughly how census is going to work. The only one is that you don't see right now is that it actually starts technically in January. They're working in Alaska where some portions of Alaska are frozen, and that's going to say for the census workers to get over there. So it starts actually in January. But then census begins in March of 2020. The official day is April Fool's Day, April 1st. And then, as I said, the 2020 is when it will be on the desk of the president. That's when and then April 2021 counts the Secretary of State for each state. So, yeah.
So that's when Michigan will get the information in 2021, April 1st, that's
Yeah.
when our Secretary of State will get all the information.
Yep.
Not specific, specific data right down to neighborhoods for doing apportionment.
Okay.
The president, on December 31st, the president will get essentially just a population count to say,
Right.
here's how many people are living in the United States. It's real accurate.
Amy, can I bring up a point
Yeah, of
too?
course.
I was looking at statistics for 2010 census numbers
Yeah.
versus I think it might have been 2018. And if I'm not mistaken, every county in the Upper Peninsula has had a decline in population.
Yeah.
And Chippewa County has had over 1,100 people decline. So when you talk
Yeah.
about the need for counting people, that need is very real.
Right. Yeah, so when you think about, exactly, if last time around, so we had the complete count committee, which I'll get into in a second, but we had a complete count committee meeting, a week and a half ago or so. And the person who, was helping us with census information, he had said that Sault Ste. Marie was undercount by 25% and Chippewa County was undercount by 30%. And so if you think of this time around, for every person that doesn't count, it was not counted in the census, we potentially be losing $18,000. And then if we've already potentially lost 1,100 people in this area, that's a lot of funding, that we won't be getting. That is crucially
Capturing
needed.
some of that 25% would offset the loss in.
If we can get that 25%, absolutely, I like your optimism. Yes, we're gonna go
That's
get it.
$1,800 per person for the next 10 years.
Yeah, so 18,000 in 10 years, that's
And with inflation, let's be realistic.
right, yeah, exactly, thank you, yeah, that's right. So it's a big deal for us. So who educates and conducts the census? So the biggest is our census staff, Census Bureau temporary workers, and volunteers and nonprofits. So like League of Voters and United Way, doing our part. So all of us trying to work together to make sure that we have a complete count. Okay, so where will census happen? It's gonna happen everywhere there's human beings. So buildings that people rent or own or are just occupying, buildings where people are living voluntarily, so people who are houseless or couch surfing, prison shelters, group homes, tenant communities. It's everywhere there's a human, there should be somebody available, some way for them to take the census.
Who's
Okay.
gonna count the prison?
That actually, so where, from my understanding, there's actually a system for that already. I guess the census works with the prison.
We do, yes, we don't send an enumerator in, the prison administrator will report the numbers based on that day.
Does he have to fill out some of the other blanks too, like how many in there are African American or?
Fill out the same questions that if it was to come to your house at a residence, yes. I think to the best of their knowledge, prisoners don't get to self-report, or self-identify, so they're gonna do it to the best of their knowledge, but.
Are they
Same.
counted for where they are then, or where they claim as their residence?
Their residences behind, where they're at behind bars.
Where they are right now?
Yep, so,
On April 1st is
Yeah.
the.
So that helps us.
yeah,
Yeah, we get lots of prisoners in here.
yeah, the communities that have prisons, definitely benefit, from the county, they benefit from state revenue sharing, revenue sharing on a state level, a little off the census, but
No,
at a
you're
state
right.
level, they're
That's what
considered
they're for.
a half a person as far as funding, so. I've been to communities that recently that have lost their prison and they're, with townships with really nothing in them and it's devastating when they lose it, so it's also beneficial when you have one in that respect.
Yes.
Because they're incarcerated, just the way they do. That's state, that's not nothing to do with census, not to confuse anybody, that's a state revenue sharing,
That's
formula,
how they,
you know.
that's the parameter that they use.
that they use for the states, not census related. Census, they are a person wholly.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Okay, all right, so how's it conducted? All right, so each year, each 10 years, it's done differently. Basically, they take in new information and they try to improve the process every time, which is great from our experiences. 2020 census builds on the past experience and uses current technology, so that's why we have it online this time. They also, even doing outreach, making they know, let's do a postcard now and a postcard next, to keep, people kind of knowing that it's coming up, and then here's a number that's attached to you that you will use to go online. So 2020, you're gonna do paper, phone, or internet. Form instructions is 12 languages, so trying to make it as inclusive as possible, so that we don't miss a single person. And then local complete count committees we have one now, we've just started it up within the last 2 weeks. United Way, though, has actually already been doing a lot of work, and so we'll get to that in 1 second. But we do have a complete count committee, and I'll talk a little bit more about what that means right now. So what it is basically community partners, your city, your county, nonprofit groups, churches, anybody, volunteers, normal people who want to get together and talk about how to make sure that we have a complete count of the people who live in our community. And so we had our last one. Nathan, who is our census regional person, lives in Marquette. he came and visited with us, and he basically went through a presentation and talked about what the census is, how it's going to be done, that there's jobs available, and I think that was, we also brainstormed some ways that we can help advertise. So working through, see if we can get like, can we get census reminders on water bills, or can we get it on your Cloverland bill? Or can we get it on your, when you have to write you get the loan due from the bank, and you get a little something on the bottom of your pay stub or bill stub. So trying to, like, in random ways, trying to get people to know that this is always, census is coming, it's a very important thing. So that's kind of basically what it is how we can all get as many people to the table, because we all have our different spheres of influence. And so if we can get as many spheres of influence together to start doing our part to reach out, that's basically what your complete count committee is. So if you want to join it, I highly recommend it. All right, so as I said before, it's to get everyone only once in the right place. And so trying to create awareness, partners working together, and it's composed of community leaders. Okay, here's all the languages that the census is going to be in, so that's fun.
Language guides.
Language guides, I'm sorry. Yep, so that's super cool. America is an awesomely diverse place. Here's how census has been, so you can kind of see how data, how it shows how we've changed a lot. And so you can see foreign-born people who have immigrated to the country, coming all the way back from 1850, and you can just kind of see how it's changed and where people are moving to. And so this is something that you might find in data from census. So it's super interesting and just a neat thing to have. Okay, and summing it up, blew through this super fast. All right, so runs through mid-March to June 2020. So that's the window of when it's active, and we are hoping that everybody will do and answer that survey. Determine number of Michigan members of Congress is going to happen between 2022 and 2032. So that's when they redraw the lines, and we have those district lines for the next 10 years. So back to why we have to have a good census, because 10 years plus 2 is those districts. Provides data to draw district lines for Congress and for state Senate and the House. Determines federal and other funding, as we had already mentioned, education, road, infrastructure, energy, healthcare, you name it. Jobs, people's jobs are actually tied to it because they're providing the services in the area, or future jobs. Provides demographic information to the public and private entities, and then the league. We've just been deemed as an official partner of the census, and I guess from what I understand is that hopefully by the time January, February, March comes around, that the census will actually have 300,000 partners, official partners, helping to get the word out. So it's cool that we're one of potentially 300,000. Okay, and so if you want to learn more about census, because I blew through this super fast, there's lots of attachments, flyers that are on the table. We even have these cool postcards, and then I can go get some scissors for, but if you answer out part of the postcard, I will send the part that you put your address on to our grow lead representative, who also I think is helped leading the Michigan counts for this area. And basically what happens is they're going to give you reminders about census information, and so that's just neat to have. And you can take a bunch, and if you want to send that, I'll give you her address. But if you can find more people to help get them in the know of census. I think that's, yeah, just check the table. There's lots of good stuff. You can also just do Google search. If you just put in Google census Michigan, you're going to find a lot of interesting information. And if there's a certain demographic that you're worried about or you want to help, and you want to print out a bunch of leaflets for it, there is a lot of stuff, as I said, on the census site. And then you can also ask me, different groups have all been collaborating and working on a lot of different things. I think that's it. Yep. Depends on you. But the last thing I just really want to hit home, because I just think it's so important, is that every person who is not counted, $18,000 for 10 years. That's a lot of money. And also, this is a really neat opportunity. I think the census is one of those times when the country can really come together and work together. Like, it doesn't matter if you're red or blue or purple. Like, this is all of us, all of our jobs, and our future funding for the next 10 years. So I think it's a really cool opportunity. If there's a group that you haven't gotten to work with and you wanted to, it might be a good time to reach out to them and say, hey, census is coming, how can we work together? Student groups, churches, any kind of group. everybody needs to know it and everybody has to answer it, and so it's just a neat opportunity, I think. So, all right, David, I'm gonna let you come up because he can answer all your questions. Oh, what?
Use that chair.
I'll ask either one of you, I don't care.
Oh,
Where are the people that aren't getting counted? I mean, really,
Could be
where
living
are
next
they
door to you.
hiding?
If I can speak.
Oh, go ahead, I'm gonna
It's
sit,
that-
yeah.
You did a great job, I
Thanks.
was, it's like you went through census.
Should we
training.
get the lights on?
But that's just a good presentation, right, honestly, because it's very concise and,
Where do you
what the leagues, come in and do is, get what we call.
Oh,
What we like to call, we don't like to call, but we consider hard to count individuals, and those can be of a variety. Those are snowbirds who leave during the winter, people at or below the poverty level, general distrust of the government. Let's face it, a lot of people live in the UP for a reason, because they don't want to be around people, so they don't want to put, a government employee knocking on their door. Children under the age of 5. When the census is completed, they go back through and they do an audit, make sure that a census worker wasn't sitting in their car just filling stuff out, and they go back and behind census workers, and they determined over 1 million kids in 2010 under the age of 5 were left out, and that was not an intentional thing. It was not like the whole family didn't claim. These are 1 million kids where somebody in the household filled out the census, but they didn't claim the child under 5, whether it be divorced parents, dad thought mom did it, mom thought dad did it. You don't think of the 18-month-old as being a person yet, just a variety of reasons, but we consider them hard to count. Homeless, and homeless is not, there are non-traditional homeless. We're not just talking about people living in their cars in parking lots or in the woods. I mean, a lot of couch surfing going on these days because of the housing crisis, and those people couch surfing may be living with somebody who's renting on a lease that's only allowed to have 4 people in there, and they have 2 family members bringing them to 6, and they think that their landlord will have access to this information, so they don't claim those other 2 people. So it's really important to get those. And we reach out to organizations like the United Way and the League and churches, and we consider partners, and all of you who cared enough, quite honestly, to show up here regardless of if you're just a citizen or you're affiliated with an organization or you wanted to come yell at a census worker. We consider you trusted voices. You're the ones who are going to go out, hopefully, take some of this information, take all this information, and tell your neighbors and tell your family and friends. So you're trusted voices, and those individuals who might have been unlikely to do the census because they don't trust anything about the government, hopefully they'll do it or be encouraged to do it because you said it's important, and it's not just their mayor or state rep or an agency yelling at them and telling them that they should do it. And it is critical. Hey, the programs, I think you said you had it up there. It's definitely on Michigan Nonprofit Association and census.gov, but there is a flyer that I'm fresh out of, unfortunately, 50 ways.
Oh, yes,
You have that up there? I love this of all the handouts that I was provided with, because it shows 50 different ways census data is used, but it puts a lot of the programs that people don't understand, like maybe the governmental name for it or the acronym for it. It puts it in language that you like, oh, yeah, that's what that program is. Yeah, we definitely, my sister and myself or my neighbors benefit from that. So it's, I really like that page a lot.
Figure 18,000, is that 1,800 a year for 10 years?
1,800 years, 10 years. That's a study that the Michigan Nonprofit Association did for the state of Michigan, for every person not counted. And then the reality is, over 10 years, I'm sure there's inflation attached to that number.
More specifically that, so is there just a big pot of money waiting to be spread out every 10 years and they give $1,800 a person? Where specifically is the money coming from? Is it?
It's like that study is like $1,800 per community, so that may, that's money lost out in Head Start programs where there's more kids than the funding that came in for, or I-75 doesn't get a portion redone or does get a portion redone based on population and business opportunities. Meyer didn't move into the Sioux and Marquette on a whim, so they're studying the numbers until they come in.
But the origin of the money though, it's federal, it's federal
It's our tax
dollars.
it's our tax dollars.
money.
Right, so it's like, is the government setting aside, like, okay, this is the money we're getting out every 10 years,
Oh,
and
no,
they release it at
It's set aside, to, establish programs. So it's the money that flows in from our tax dollars and flows out through dedicated, programs and, we study about community spending, businesses coming in.
Okay, so I think he's asking, has it been accumulating over time, or
No.
is it being
No.
pulled out of just?
No, it's annually, that's what comes, that's money that's allocated from tax dollars annually.
So like if you show a drop,
In other words,
you might not get your services completely paid for, or they're gonna say there's not a need there, we have all this data, so we
Correct,
can
they're
track.
gonna say that there's a lot less kids that need school lunch program, and that money's not gonna come back to you in a rebate check, it's gonna go to another community.
Mhm.
the money is basically there when corporate taxes, individual taxes, whatever. Or if the money's not there, you just write a blank check in and they just, they'll make $1 billion every in whole.
So you did a great job, there's not a whole lot more, I just wanted to touch, cause it gets
No,
more
yeah,
confusing, it did for me, and talk about the American Community Survey Act. So the census used to have a short form,
Yeah.
which everybody has now, and then a long form. And the long form gets real detailed, how many toilets do you have in your house, what's your income levels and all that. Well, they skip that out and just do the short form for the decennial every 10 years. The American Community Survey goes on all the time, every year, continuously. So it's a very random thing, and I'm surprised how often I run into a
Wow.
group of 4 people and one of them is dealing with it.
Those are sent individually once in a while to a specific residence.
Yeah, like a person actually comes and interviews you right at your house, does it,
Wow.
that's how depth it is. But when you listen on the radio, when you hear jobs reports, building reports, any kind of report, that's census data.
Right, so you can think of it as, if we can count every child in Chippewa County, then theoretically, there shouldn't be a shortfall for government programs to our county for children. Let's say school lunches or whatever, because all those children have been
That's
counted and they'll get the money allotted to them from our tax dollars.
Correct.
You can think of it that way.
Correct.
So to be more efficient and to get the money that you pay in, counting everyone is crucial.
Mhm.
Thank you.
A
Mhm.
lot of programs are based on census.
Yes.
Yep.
And I like open discussions like this. I just wanted to follow up a couple of things
Yeah.
on the presentation. One of the things we didn't have an opportunity to talk about here are jobs.
Mhm.
Um,
Oh,
the
yeah.
The census is really quite honestly desperately looking for employees nationwide. And it goes to, again, we like to hire people within the community, from the community, trusted voices, you're more likely to respond better to your neighbor. And I know I don't live in the UP, but I live in northern Michigan, further up you get, more isolated you get and less trusting of downstaters, honestly. And so we want people from the Sioux to be knocking on people from the Sioux's doors, or surrounding counties. And those jobs pay, up here there'll be enumeration jobs, field jobs primarily. They pay $14 an hour. They're part-time jobs, and if you have 5 hours to give this week, you can tell your supervisor, if you're not the supervisor, 5 hours this week, I'm available 15 hours next week. Heading out of town for the week after that. Job is scheduled and paid on a weekly basis. It's quite easy. I have some flyers up there.
And this is just through June.
This will start it'll start training in December, or realistically at this point, January, because you'll be doing some of the group quarters counseling, going into identified convalescent home senior centers, working with the jail and prison administrators, those type of opportunities, counting the homeless, all happen before census day.
Actually knock on doors.
March 31st is the day that we count all the homeless in the U.S. So every census employee will be checking Walmart parking lots, under bridges, in woods where we're identified. And That's why we're working hard now, I'm a partnership specialist, working hard to work to gain partners like the United Way, League, and churches, and anyone that's with an organization, an institution, a business that can help us, because in the community, where the people are at. We can't come in. Michigan's part of the Chicago region, so there's 8 states in the Chicago region. Administrators from Chicago just can't come in and say, oh, we know where all the homeless in Sault Ste. Marie and the surrounding area are at. We need your help.
I was just wondering about the length of time.
The length of time commitment is completely up to you, so if you, head out somewhere every, for a few weeks in the summer and you do it, the job will run realistically, wrap up at the end of August, could go a little later.
And
As
the does the training take place in Sault Ste. Marie?
I can't speak 100% because we don't have a training location lined up, but the only area census office for northern Michigan is in Traverse City. So I know they're not gonna make me drive there. I just can't say if it's gonna be in the Sioux or if it's gonna be in St. Ignace. But they put them regionally. It's part of looking for partners for locations like this room to train, some paid training. Get done. First thing you need to do is, when they accept you as an applicant to be hired, then they will send you for a background check and be fingerprinted. We have locations all over for that, and that's, we don't want somebody with known child abuse crimes knocking on people's door or fraudulent crimes in their background. But if you have yourself or friends, and the question comes up a lot, if I had a DUI 8 years ago, I won't go past the background check. That's those misdemeanors are not going to hold you back. So we encourage you to apply if you think you want to do it. And I encourage you, when you do it online, it's about a 10 to 15 minute assessment. It's not a resume based application. I encourage you to do the supervisory portion of it, just another 2-3 minutes. And doesn't mean you have to be a supervisor, but it may provide a better opportunity if you're really willing to work some more hours than the rest. Or $14 an hour is the pay that I know of right now. I heard on the radio that due to lack of applicants, they are raising the wage, but I can't speak specifically to where. So.
Could people stay in permanently, like say they love it, and they were able to get the supervisor job? Like, would you think that there is room for that at Census? Or
past the census? No, I wish. I love my job. This job I have now is a total blend of previous career jobs, from sales to government liaison work, but it'll be all over. It'll probably be all over for me in June, July. But it's temporary. And right back, because I'm amazed how many people I meet that said, "Oh, I worked on the census every year since 1960, and every 10 years come back." Individuals that have been in the federal government before, individuals that have military, usually rise to the top 2, this preferential hiring on those basis.
So if we wanna apply to be paid census worker,
Tonight when you go home.
when's the deadline to have that? I mean, what are you looking at here about when would be the last time?
As soon as possible, because I met with the area census office manager who will cover this area Tuesday, and he's starting to pull now. They just opened up, that office opened up a little late because of lack of staffing availability, but they're open now and they're pulling individuals. And if you have any family or friends that are tribal members, I desperately need applicants from the tribe. The Sioux tribe is going to be enumerating on the reservation themselves. We want tribe members to be knocking, be on the reservation land and knocking on tribe members' doors. That's what I keep blanking out. But I want to go back because you did a wonderful presentation. You spoke to it, and you're all going to see a lot of advertisement coming out about you can do the census online and encouraging you to do it, self-respond online. You may not have that opportunity right up front. You may have other opportunities in being in the UP. They've identified, I'd say 80% of the UP has been identified as not having internet service, reservation lands, and The other one is if you had a community where it's your mail is goes to a PO box. The census does not mail the PO boxes.
Oh, not even the postcards.
Nope, not even postcards. So if you fall into one of those categories, you may have internet service, but if they deem that you didn't have good service, you're gonna receive on your door, instead of the postcard mailing, on your door handle, you're gonna receive a packet with the ability to do it old school on paper form and envelope mailed back.
Whoa.
Or that will also have unique identifiers, so if you do have internet service, you can still go online. Or if you don't, you can, we're networking with libraries and other organizations, so there may be another way to do it online. Or you call the 800 number and you actually talk to a person, it's not gonna be push 1, push 2,
So will they be calling us, or do we have to call them?
you have to call them.
Okay, so
This is-
we're not getting any census phone calls.
No, if you're gonna get contacted, it's gonna be somebody knocking on your door that you have not self-responded,
Okay.
about mid-April, late April.
Now, do you know, if they're in an area where they have post office boxes only, but everybody in the Upper Peninsula now has a fire number or emergency number, 911 address, will they be taking record of that then?
If you receive your mail in a post office box, you will not receive the postcard.
That I understand, but will they be taking a record of the addresses, even though ignore the post
Oh,
office?
yes, absolutely.
Right,
We just finished up what we call our address verification. Some of you may have just recently had a census worker come to your door, and what that phase was where we looked from GIS, we looked at community records, and said these are identified residential houses. But the census had a question. I use my house as an example because I got the knock on the door. I live in a subdivision that is the only single family house in this subdivision, but then I have apartments and I have condos. My address as a single family as a single resident, didn't match everything else there. So a census worker came to verify that I was residential. Or we look at it as like, is there somebody living above Al's Body Shop? And they go and knock. So they really checking to make sure it's a residence and there's individuals living there. They weren't asking your name or how many people live there, but just rather, does somebody live here? And is a split, is it single family or other units attached? But I really getting there because a lot of northern Michigan, it's 95% of people in the United States will receive that postcard, and it's crazy how much northern Michigan falls into that 5% that won't. So. You did such a great job.
No. Do you want to talk about United Way and what you're doing and how we can, if there's anything we could do to support you?
Sure. So what United Way, one of the important things that we do is try to bring, what we were able to do is sit on a complete count committee for the Upper Peninsula region. And one of the things that we're doing is taking the lead as a nonprofit in the Eastern region. So we're working with our 3 counties, Chippewa, Lewis, and Mackinac, and focusing on some of the, you didn't really go over the census tract, but there's a whole map that shows where targeted areas are that are more likely to not respond, especially necessarily trusting of the government, pieces like that. So what we did was we scoured over those numbers, had a few different conversations locally, and opted to focus on 2 primary targets and then support what everybody else is doing in the EUP region. We're a staff of 4 in our office, and we're located here in the Sioux, and as all of you know, travel across the EUP tends to be a little bit dicey in the spring, all the way up into May sometimes. So we're trying to figure out ways to reach folks, just educate them on why it's important, support their efforts if they want to take the survey. We're very careful not to insist that someone take it. It's personal to them if they choose not to. We can't We can't change their mind on that, right? We can't coax them. But we can definitely explain why it's important and explain all of the benefits. And a lot of the folks that we see that we're working with on a regular basis through our own office and then the nonprofit partners that we work with across the region, those same folks that are a little bit timid about taking the census survey are the same ones that are receiving the benefits that will suffer if they're not counted. So we want to make sure that they understand that piece as well. And we are working with some partners trying to create opportunities where we can help fill a need while also educating people. So we will do some of the mobile food distributions. We were lucky enough to be working with Grow and Lead out of, and we were able to receive grant dollars through that, so we can bring up 2 trucks right now, and I'm working on a 3rd one. That will allow folks to come in, fill up their pantries, and then also receive information and be able to ask questions about the census. We try to come to people where they are. We try to explain to them on a level that they'll understand. Not everybody will understand when you start talking about census. Some of our younger folks have never been through one, so they're very new to it. I'm thankful that it's the short form, especially for some of our younger folks, but there will be opportunities throughout the next several months where we ask volunteers to come in and help us. And I encourage anybody that would like to, by all means, give us a call, stop into our office, talk to us about your availability, and if there are opportunities that we can plug you into, we're happy to do that.
I feel that these outreaches for different nonprofit organizations to help out, they're the ones that people are coming to.
Absolutely.
And you know a lot where these people are because they're, unfortunately, for whatever reason, they're asking for help. So you're going to be reaching a lot of people that we would have a hard time communicating with or reaching.
Right.
You know where they were.
Yes, and those folks are more likely to listen to somebody who they've been working with regularly, whether it be a caseworker or a program staff. So absolutely, that is one of the things that we'll be doing over the next couple of months. In December, we have an EUP-wide nonprofit symposium where we're gathering everybody together, not just to learn about what each other does, because there's a lot of to share out the census information, to share out some best practices, some things that we've heard, and to hear what concerns they might have that we might be able to help with as well.
I just had a thought, what about like university students, or, because some of them are in political science and that type of thing, and they might be a good resource for volunteer homes.
Absolutely. We plug in very well to Lake State, and that is one of the things where we'll have some of the volunteers helping out.
I'm sitting here with my hand like, why don't I get a chance? I want to mention, because it's just be talking about everybody else, and it's a college. Are definitely hard to count. You may not even be familiar with the census. Living in a frat house, that postcard's the last thing that they care about coming in. But as I tell college students, and those who deal with them and trying to get them out there, it's like, they may be 18 now and not care, but by the time this census data that we're using is over with, they could be married and have 3 kids and relying heavily on this data. So 10 years, short time, but a long time.
So college students
Can I ask what they do about seasonal people, snowbirds? How do you capture that information if they're not back yet from Florida or Arizona or whatever?
Or not count them twice.
Well, they do usually catch them in the audit if they count them twice.
That's easy.
Yeah, I actually forgot to put it in I was supposed to say that.
I
is
would
that
prefer you speak to it because she got it her party line. But
well, and I was supposed to, I actually had notes and I didn't use any of my notes, unfortunately, so the league is probably not gonna be very happy with me for not using my notes. But, so what they wanna do is that basically whichever home that the person spends the most time out, so if you own 2 homes, you wanna answer for the house that you live at the most. So if you're doing Florida and Michigan, so when you're talking to fellow community members, just say, answer the survey, your residence is the place that you live the most. If it's 1 day more, that's your place of residence for the census. Yeah.
But what if
So
they're not? But what if they're not available?
So you're gonna get, you'll get census information at both homes. So likely
Gotcha.
you'll have, if you haven't answered it, it's going to show up at both of your houses, but they only want you answering it for the house that you spend the most time at.
The census mails to residents, not individuals.
Yeah, so it's gonna go everywhere. I mean, everywhere they think you're at, you know, but you only answer it for the one you spend the most time at.
So college students are counted the same as prisoners, then, basically?
Depends, I mean, if they're living in a dorm, then they're essentially counted like prisoners or those living in, you know, assisted living. They are counted at the university, not at their parents' home.
But is the university doing it, or would the student do it?
The universities do it, compile the information from the students.
Okay.
So the students have but will be given a form to fill out that so they can identify their self-response on their race, their age, and then provide it, and then we collect it as a whole from the dorm. So we're not going door to door in a dormitory.
Mm.
But individuals, students living off campus, they're gonna be treated like, you know, every other residential house, so
Mhm.
you have 50, again, and this is where the living over, lease capacity can fall in. You know, just make sure that, you know, a safety net for everybody to be captured.
Yeah.
It's just important that there is nobody that's gonna live, that's 85 years before anybody's gonna have access to these records.
What did you just say? It won't be 85 years?
Yeah, because I get that because a lot of like, well, what do you mean nobody's gonna see it?
Yeah.
That's how we do genealogy, but you can go back right now and look at 2010 census data and see who was living at what residences
Yeah.
down the road.
Yeah, so for the specific residents, you can't find that out. I thought it was 72 years, but maybe it's 80 something. But like that's by law, that information on the individual basis will not be allowed to go out.
What if a law enforcement agency had a warrant?
Nope,
If,
it's
We don't share with anybody.
not ICE, nobody.
Nobody. I'm sworn as a census employee. I didn't, you know, background check how serious they take it. I came into Chicago on a Monday to train with weather, delayed it, so they said we'll just start you on Tuesday. I showed them I didn't get paid for Monday, and I'm not complaining, but I didn't get paid for Monday because I didn't become an employee until I signed an oath that said I cannot share, or will not share any data that I may come across for the rest of my life, punishable by prison time and fine. So I love this job, but not worth any prison time or a fine. Like, and that's the rest of my life. And my particular position, I don't have and don't assume that I've come across any data like that. But census takers at your door will, and they're sworn to the same oath. And then, you know, there's concern like, what does the president see? What does the mayor see? What, no, they're looking at aggregated data. It's just simply saying how many people live in a census tract. I mentioned census tract can be really small or large depending on the area and population.
Yeah.
So there's no name attached to the data, actually, that you say, no.
Yeah. And it's not even a neighborhood. Like their census tract is not the same as a neighborhood. Those are two different
Cross
things.
over municipal lines.
Yeah.
It even goes into the water because you never know. I mean, Lake Superior could go 6 miles offshore and be built on 50 years down the road. So you look at census tracts, it's everything underwater, above water in the United States. And I really encourage you, if you have any interest in data or things at all, go on the uscensus.gov and just look at the data and different. They have fascinating stuff on tribal, on businesses, on, you know, race, just and where people are moving throughout the U.S. and migration flows, and a lot of really cool stuff.
Yep. And if
So
you're into
more time to
genealogy, that's a huge piece that comes out of this as well. So if you ever talk to someone who's into that, tell them, you know, they'll love it.
And I talked about, you know, you're part of the CCC committee, and you're part of the committee, and if any of you are with an organization, school, political party, anything that touches people, you don't necessarily want to be a part of the committee, or even if you do, which I'm not discouraging, I'm encouraging you to reach out and be part of the committee. I have just a short form that asks, really looking for your name, organization name, and phone number, and there's a checklist of things you might be able to assist us, as simple as putting a flyer up at your organization or talking about it at your next meeting. And we consider you a partner and we'll plug you in, so anything happens quickly and breaking news wise, anything new comes out, we can feed it directly to you. And, I have those here today. It would take you 2 seconds to fill out, but I really would appreciate it on the census end, so we can help gain more partners and get more people in touch. 'Cause if you encourage one person to fill out the census, it's $18,000 for this community that you've helped.
That's right.
And everybody knows, if they're not one, everybody knows a hard to count individual. Who'd be living under your roof with you.
All right, cool. If there's no other questions, I think that's it.
Okay, I'm here, so if you have any questions you want to ask,
Yeah.
about anything in depth on employment or any other issues, I'm here. I have that form if you're interested. Thank you for coming out.
Yeah, thank you so much, and grab papers and grab rack cards and like share those, like we love you to take a bunch and then just share them with people.
Okay.
That's funny.
Yes, please, but I do need
Any groups or organizations that need?